So, in the last class, we read about the Bhakti movement, and for today's class, we are starting with the Sufi movement. So, this is also a very important part of your UPSC syllabus, and I would like to bring your attention towards a few details that you need to remember in regards of the Sufi movement in India. So, let's get to know what this Sufi movement was about. So, the Sufi movement is something that shaped the socio-religious landscape of not just India but even different other parts of the world. So, it essentially started in the Middle East, and from there it came to India, and from India it went to the other Southeast Asian countries, and from Middle East it also went to Africa. Alright, so it didn't originate in India, it originated in Middle East, but it came to India quite a while after that. Okay, so it was a socio-religious, so it shaped the socio-religious landscape in the sense that what we saw even with Bhakti movement, that when there was too much of orthodoxy in the religion, then this movement was like a breath of fresh air, because it rejected the rigidity and the rituals that these extreme forms of religion were propagating at that point of time, and they emphasized on spirituality, on love, eternal love and devotion over materialism and other rigid orthodoxy that were there in other religious beliefs, in the religious belief of Islam, and also in case of Bhakti movement it was in the form of Hinduism. Alright, so let's look at the origin, that from where where lies the origin of this Sufi movement. So the word Sufi comes from the Arabic word suf, which means wool. Alright, this is a symbolic of the simple cloaks that the Sufis wear. I think you must have watched it in some movies or even like some pictures. The long anarkali like dresses that they wear, they are usually in white color, and they used to wear this caps. If you have watched movies like Jodha Akbar or other movies that feature some Qawwali happening, then you must have noticed that they wear a simple white cloak, and that is symbolic of purity and devotion. So there is nothing extravagant about it. It is pure simple wool and a simple cloak. That is the meaning of the word Sufi, which comes from Saf, from Arabic. Alright, so Sufism or Tawawuf, okay, Tawawuf is the Persian name for Sufism, emphasizes tazkiya, spiritual purification. So they believed in the purity of soul. They believed in complete devotion that would help in attaining spiritual purification. They believed in selfless love. They believed in detachment from all the material things and a direct connection with God. So it believed that if you had true devotion and you detach yourself from material world, then you can have a direct connection with the God. There was eccentricism. Eccentricism essentially means wandering and preaching and promoting one's religion. They did not associate with the material things, or they did not settle down, but they rather were wanderers. So if you have known the word fakir, right, they go to one place, they don't have material possessions, and they teach their philosophies, they talk about their philosophies. So that essentially is eccentricism. Alright, they believed in meditation and they believed in self-discipline. That was their way of living. We will look at the principles of Sufism now. So the principles of Sufism, first thing we need to know is Tawheed. Tawheed means oneness of God, that is unity of all. So it believed that you, me and every other individual on this planet, they are somehow connected. There is a unity, there is a oneness, and that oneness is our connection with God. They believed in Wadat al-Wajud, which is the unity of being. The doctrine was by Ibn Arabi. All right. So this Wadat al Wajud is about our being, that our creation, our existence is already already an association with the god. So they believed, if you have known, the way I said that in bhaktism we saw this, there is this concept of dualism and non-dualism, right? Do you remember we talked about dualism and non-dualism? So in non-dualism I talked about the concept of Brahman, right, that there is only one consciousness. So this Wadat al Wajud is also talking about the same thing, that there is a unity, there is a unity of being. There is only our being is in itself is a connection with God, and this doctrine was given by Ibn Arabi. Okay, let me highlight this, Ibn Arabi. Okay, the next is Ishq-e-Hakiki. Ishq-e-Hakiki means divine love. So obviously if you listen to the Qawwali music, if you listen to the devotion music, you will understand its true essence, that their love, the love they express through these music, that is the divine love for the divine entity. There is Fana. Fana means self-annihilation. You can remember the movie Fana as well. That means annihilation. Annihilation in the sense like you are completely erasing your own existence, erasing own existence to unite with God. Right. So what we understand of fana is that it means the self-destruction, self-annihilation to get united with God. There is zikr. Zikr means remembrance of God. Okay, we said now we zikr kiya. So zikr is remembrance of God, and they did this zikr continuously. They thought that the more we talk about the divine entity, the more we get connected to them. There is Peer Murid. Peer Murid is master and disciple tradition. Okay, so the Peer is the saint who is the teacher, and Murid is the disciple. All right. So there is the guidance from a Sufi saint, that who is a Peer or a Sheikh. So the Peer essentially teaches the Murid of the ways of the order of Sufism. Now we are going to think of spread. We are going to talk about the spread of Sufism. So it entered India in the 11th to 12th century. Essentially, Bhakti and Sufi tradition almost started along the 7th or 8th century. Alright, but it entered India a bit late, a few hundred years after that. That was in the 11th and 12th century through Persian and Central Asian mystics. So they were wanderers, as I said. So they crossed boundaries and they entered India, and they propagated the ideas of Sufism in India starting from 11th to 12th century. So they flourished under the Delhi Sultanate. If you remember the historical timeline, 11th to 12th century, Delhi Sultanate was in the throne. They were ruling a very big chunk of the country at that point of time, and of course later from the Delhi Sultanate to the Mughals. The earliest known Sufi in India was Al-Hujwiri. Let me highlight it for you. Al-Hujwiri, right? He was also called Data Ganj Baksh, and he wrote a very significant literature for in this Sufi and the list in the context of Sufi literature, that is Kashf-ul-Majhud. Alright, it was in the language Persian. So the first known Sufi is Al-Hujwiri, and he wrote Kashf-ul-Majhud. Alright, so if you could recollect, if you could remember these two names, then it would be really great. Okay, now we are going to talk about the silsilas. Silsilas are like the different sects, you can say. They were like the different sects under this Sufi order, right? So different sections or different categories under it. So by the 12th century, the Sufism organized into silsilas, forming an unbroken chain of discipleship. So it essentially these sects or these silsilas formed from one Sufi or one Peer, and his teaching would further go on to his disciple. And this is how the silsilas would continue. That was an unbroken chain of discipleship. All right, from one peer to his student, then to another, and it just further continued like this. So first we will see the classification. In classification there are two broad classifications, that is the Bashara and Beshara. So the Bashara classification is for the ones who followed Sharia along with mysticism. All right, they followed Sharia. If you know Sharia is like a rule book of Islam. All right, and they were the ones, the people who fall under, the Sufis who fall under Bashara, they followed the Sharia along with their mysticism, along with the path of the Sufi tradition. All right, so example is Chishti, example is Suravadi, and Naqshband Qadiri, Naqshband Qadiri, Suravadi and Chishti, they fall under Bashara. And under Beshara, they rejected the rigid legalism. The way I said, Sharia is like a rule book, and they rejected the rigidity, the orthodoxy that prevailed in Sharia, and they were wandering ascetics. Okay, they would go from one place to another, promoting and teaching and propagating their teachings. All right, there was a lot of influence from Hindu and yoga traditions as well, because the way we saw that the timeline of Bhakti movement, if you remember, is from 7th century to 17th century. So we can see that if we consider the timeline when Sufism came into India, that is from the 11th to 12th century, at that point of time obviously the Bhakti movement was also very prevalent in the landscape of India. So it's quite natural that there will be a certain section of people who would be influenced by that. So the people who fall under Beshara, Sufi order, got highly influenced from the Hindu and yoga traditions. Okay, now just look into the silsilas that exist. First is Chishti Silsila. Under Chishti Silsila, first thing we have to know is that it was founded in India. All right, very important. It was founded in India by Moinuddin Chishti. Very important name. Let me highlight it for you. Moinuddin Chishti. We have a dargah of his, right? So please let me know in the comment section where we have his dargah. And he was an important personality. He resided in Ajmer, and his timeline is from 1142 to 1236. All right, he promoted love and tolerance. He also promoted Fakr. Fakr is material wealth, renunciation of material wealth, or like rejection of material wealth. They said that human beings need not to have so much of connection with material wealth, that is Fakr, and they have to reject it to complete, to to give themselves completely to the devotion of God. There was association with Hindu and Jain yogis as well. All right, and they used local languages. So local languages, obviously Persian came, we associate Persian mainly with it, some of Arabic, some of Persian, and later the language that was mostly popular was Urdu, that came into existence because of the widespread of Sufi tradition in India. All right, the saints under Chishti are Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki. Let me highlight it for you. Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki, he resided in Delhi. His timeline is from 1173 to 1235. The next important saint under this is Baba Fariduddin. Fariduddin Ganje Sheikh. All right, and his timeline is from 1179 to 1266, and he resided in Punjab. His contributions were added to Guru Granth Sahib. Very important information. Please remember that one of the Sufi saints whose contributions are added to the Guru Granth Sahib is Baba Fariduddin Ganje Shakar. Okay, next personality is very important, that is Nizamuddin Aulia. His verses, his poetry is still popular, There are a lot of people who sing qawwali nowadays. They have this Nizamuddin Aulia had a great influence on qawwali music. All right. So what are his important features? His timeline is from 1238 to 1325. He resided in Delhi. He maintained strict independence from rulers, so he truly adapted to the ascetic life, and he established langar. He fed poor people. He believed in the goodness of all. He believed in selfless love. The next personality is Amir Khusro. His timeline is from 1235 to 1325. Sorry, 1253 to 1325. 1253 to 1325. Amir Khusro. His disciple developed qawwali. Was his disciple? Oh wait. So Nizamuddin Aulia's disciple is, let me draw the connection, is Amir Khusro. Alright, the way we saw that in the Sufi order, there was this deep connection of one peer and then to his disciple. So Nizamuddin Aulia's disciple is Amir Khusro. Alright, what Amir Khusro's contributions are? He played a very vital role in the development of qawwali, sitar and tabla. He was a poet, musician and a scholar. Alright, erase it before proceeding further. Okay, so now we are continuing with Nizamuddin Aulia. Alright, Nizamuddin Aulia opposed then Sultan Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. What we saw here is that Nizamuddin Aulia maintained strict independence from the ruler. So he was the one who opposed the then Sultan Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, and it was his court, Hunuz Dilli Dur Ast, that is, Delhi is still far. This is the quote by Nizamuddin Aulia. The next personality under Chishti Silsila, right? We are reading Chishti Silsila. So the next personality under Chishti Silsila is Nasiruddin Chirag Dehlari. His timeline is from 1274 to 1356. He resided in Delhi. Next personality is Sheikh Burunuddin Garib. His timeline is from late 13th century to early 14th century. He was prevalent he resided in Deccan. Now we are going to learn about the next silsila, that is the Suravadi silsila. Alright, so the founder of Suravadi silsila is Sihabuddin Suravandi. Obviously here the Suravardi comes from his name, that is the founder. The founder of Suravardi silsila is Shahabuddin Suravardi. Shahabuddin Suravardi's timeline is of 12th century, and it was this silsila originated in Baghdad. It came to India with Sheikh Bahuddin Zakaria. His timeline is 1182 to 1262 and was highly prevalent in Punjab and Sindh. So let me highlight the two names for you. Suravardi silsila's founder is Shihabuddin Suravardi, and it came to India via Sheikh Bahuddin Zakaria. What did the Suravardis believed in? They believed in state patronage, they emphasized Sharia, and they focus on ilm or the scholarly knowledge. Alright, so this is like the more organized or more patronage based Sufism that we can see via Suravardi silsila. The next silsila is of Naqshbandi silsila. Naqshbandi silsila's founder is Khwaja Bahuddin Naqshbandi, and his timeline is in the 14th century, and he originated in Central Asia. This silsila originated in Central Asia. They believed in strict adherence to Sharia. Sharia again is the law book of Islam. They rejected bidat. Bidat is innovation. Innovation in form of your devotion. Innovation in form of worshipping. So they rejected bidat, and they were against shrine veneration and sama, that is devotional music. So they did not wanted the existence of shrine or sama, that is the devotional music. They preferred wajat al-shuhud, that is apparent unity, over wazad ul-wujud, that is the unity of being. So this means that they believed in the structured way of devotion, and they did not believe in the idea that God and every individual is one. Alright, that was the belief. God and every individual is one was a belief under the unity of being, that is wajad al-wujud. Wadat al-wujud. So they did not believe in wadat al-wujud, they rather preferred wadat al-suhud. They opposed King Akbar's Deen-e-Ilahi or Sul-e-Kul, that is the religious tolerance. So as we saw that they wanted strict adherence to Sharia and they did not want any religious integration as such. So they were against Akbar's Deen-e-Ilahi. So what we see here is that the Naqshbandi silsila was against Akbar's Deen-e-Ilahi, but there were other segments of Sufism who have deeply inspired Deen-e-Ilahi of Akbar, right, which believed in religious tolerance. Okay, so Naqshbandi silsila also rejected religious integration. It criticized Sufi practices that did not abide the Sharia, and Jahangir was the one who imprisoned him once, but later understood his importance in the then landscape of India, what influence he had on the people, and it was much later that he also released him. So Naqshbandi order thrived under Aurangzeb. We have seen a lot of evidences that Aurangzeb was the one who did not believe in religious tolerance, and that is quite natural to understand that he was the one who promoted the Naqshbandi silsila, because obviously Naqshbandi silsila was rather the orthodox side of Sufism, and the Naqshbandi order thrived under Aurangzeb. The Naqshbandi scholars include, let me highlight the names for you. There is Sheikh Mir Muhammad and there is Baqi Billah. They were the one who were responsible in shaping the religious policies of Mughals henceforth, right? Now we are going to read about the Qadri silsila. The founder of the silsila is Sheikh Abdullah Qadir Gilani. If I am pronouncing any of these words incorrectly, so please pardon me for that. All right. So I am like pronouncing them strictly on the basis of how their spellings are. So if you want to correct me, you can definitely correct me in the comment section. So there is Sheikh Abdul Qadir Gilani, and his timeline is in the 11th century. Origin is in Baghdad. Alright. The important saints associated are Mian-Mir. Timeline is from 1550 to 1635. He was the spiritual guide to Dara Shuko and Janara. Right. We have all, if you have known the history, the Mughal history, you know that Aurangzeb was the one who killed Dara Shuko. Dara Shuko was the preferred descendant of the throne according to Shah Jahan's desire was that Dara Shuko would have descended his throne, but Aurangzeb did not make that happen. He killed Dara Shuko and later got the throne for himself and imprisoned his own father. So Mian Mir was the spiritual guide of Dara Suko and Queen Jahanara. Not queen, she was a princess, Princess Jahanara. Alright. The other important name that comes under this Qadri Silsila is Shah Bakshani. I pronounce it right. Shah Badakshani. So Shah Badakshani's timeline is of 17th century and he promoted Wadat al-Wajud, that is the unity of being. We have already learnt about this, right? The next silsila is Firdausi Silsila. The founder of Firdausi Silsila was Sheikh Buruddin Samarkandi. Sheikh Buruddin Samarkandi. Oh my god, this is not straight. Yeah. And his timeline is of 14th century, and other personality, other peer under this silsila is Sheikh Sarfuddin Wahaya Maneri. His timeline is that of 1263 to 1381. His residence was in Bihar. The next silsila is Madari Silsila. The founder of Madari Silsila was Jalaluddin Bukhari. His place of residence was he was also called Madari, not his place. He was also called Madari, and hence the name Madari Silsila, and his timeline is of 15th century. Now you might feel the necessity to know what is the difference between all these silsilas that we are learning. I would say that it is rather a waste of time. Like, you can do it, you can obviously Google search and check out for yourself that how these silsilas were different from one another. We have learned some categorization of all these silsilas, these early silsilas, starting from this Chishti silsila. Right, we have learned about Chishti Silsila, we have learned about Suravadi Silsila, we have learned about Naqshbandi Silsila, and we have also learned about Qadri Silsila. But later when we are learning these other smaller sections of the Silsila, I don't believe that getting into the nitty-gritties is really that important. That would just burden you with more information, and in the long run you would not be able to retain all the details and all the facts. So I insist that you just roughly go through it so that you have these names associated in your head, that okay, which peer is associated with which silsila. If you can only recollect that much would be enough for the examination. Alright, so we were studying Madari Silsila, right? So Madari Silsila, they rejected materialism. Yeah, so they rejected materialism and they were wandering aesthetics. So you will find a lot of similarities also in different silsilas. There were very small details of the region or a certain specific idea of certain belief that where they differed. Alright, the next silsila is Rishi Silsila. Rishi Silsila's founder is Sheikh Nuruddin Wali. His timeline is from 1377 to 1440, and he resided in Kashmir. There was a lot of influence from local Shaivite Bhakti tradition. Okay, now that we have learned about these silsilas, let's just proceed to know the Sufi practices and the institutions. So these terminologies become very important. Alright, so let's see what we have. There is Khanka, that is the hospice, the center of Sufi learning and community services. So this were the centers where the preachings happened, where the teaching took place, and it was also the center for community service. Dargah are shrines. So what are these shrines or what are these dargahs? After a peer's death, there was a pilgrimage site built in his memory. Alright, so these dargahs were the pilgrimage site made after a peer's death. So each dargah is associated with a peer. Alright, then there is ziyarat. So what happened is that once these dargahs were built, there were visitors who would come to visit the tomb of the peer to seek blessings, and this process, this pilgrimage was called ziyarat. The next thing is Sama and Qawwali. Sama and Qawwali were devotional musics and gathering. So the people who performed Sufism, who were a part of Sufism, they would come together, they would have gatherings, and they would participate in the communal singing of Qawwali and Sama. The next thing that we need to learn about are what happened. Thing that is important is some important terminologies associated with Sufism. All right, so the terminologies becomes very important because UPSC the examination, the UPSC prelims has this tendency of giving a lot of terminologies from different portions of history, all right, from the different timelines, and they would ask you to like match the columns, or find out that what from which part or what is the meaning of those terminologies and which timeline they existed in, from which timeline they are from the history, right? So the terminologies become very important. So it is obviously essential for you to, whichever the historical time period you're learning about, you go through the important terminologies of that period. So we have a list here. Let's start with Pir. Pir, of course, we know he was the spiritual master or the guide, and there is Murid. We know that Murid is Pir's disciple. So the disciple of a Sufi saint is Murid. There is Khilafa. We know who Khilafa is, right? There is a huge significant landmark even in the modern Indian history which is associated with Khilafa. Can you tell? That is the Khilafat movement. Can you tell me when was the Khilafat movement taking place? When did Khilafat movement happen? So Khilafat movement was in in 1919. All right. So who were this Khilafa? Who is Khilafa? Khilafa is the successor of a Sufi. Then there is Tariqa. Tariqa is the spiritual path or the Sufi order. Then there is Fana. We already saw this. This is the self-annihilation in divine love. There is Baqa. Baqa is eternal existence in divine presence. What does Baqa essentially means? It means that it is a state of mind. It is attainment of this state of this existence where we are connected with the divine presence. There is Zikr. We know Zikr. Zikr is the recitation of God's name. There is Urs. Urs is the anniversary of a saint's or a peer's passing. There is Tasawwuf. That is essentially what we know of Sufism. That is the spiritual practices and philosophy of Sufi mystics. And there is Sama. Sama is the gathering to engage in devotional music. And the devotional music, there is singing of Qawwalis. That is Sama. Now we have to look into the impact of Sufism. What impact this historical movement had? We have to know that obviously the Sufi movement mostly promoted interfaith harmony, and there was this religious influence that shaped the spiritual outlook of that time. And we saw a very historic documentation coming into being as Akbar's Deen-e-Ilahi policy. That essentially was religious tolerance, right? This promoted religious tolerance. If you don't know, Deen-e-Ilahi came into being where Akbar called different scholars from different religion, and he spent a lot of time in forming this Deen-e-Ilahi policy with the knowledge of all the greatest of all the religion. He called a lot of priests from Christianity. He called the Hindu saints. He called the Sufi saints and a lot other people. And then he formed the Deen-e-Ilahi policy. So there is also social reform and women empowerment. We get to see this because they believed in the oneness of everyone. So there is, of course, the women were also empowered during this time. So the important female Sufi of whom we know a little information about, they are Rabia al-Basri, and her timeline is of 8th century. And there is Bibi Fatima Sam. her timeline is 14th century. So if any time there is a question that where all the Sufis were males or there were no female Sufi, so we know that the statement is incorrect, because there we have evidence of at least a few female Sufis, the most important or significant among them being Rabia al-Basri and Bibi Fatima Sam. So Sufism also believed in this idea of charity. So they would have khidmat e khalq, that is the service of humanity. Then we learned that Nizamuddin Aulia would conduct langars, establish langars where free food would be provided to all, especially the poor people, right? So there is also the cultural influence that we need to remember. Cultural influence is the rise of the language Urdu. So Urdu is essentially a language that originated in our country. It took different elements from different other languages, that is Persian and Hindi, and Urdu came into being. So there is Sufi poetry, of course, and there is Qawwali music. Qawwali music is still prevalent today, right? There isn't a lot of literature that we find from Sufism. A few of them, the most important that Sufi literature that we have is associated with Rumi. Have you heard the name of Rumi? But we don't have any concrete evidences of Rumi coming to India. So Rumi's collection of poetry already exists, and that is the most popular Sufi literature. But there are a few that we can associate with in the Indian context. So let us go through that. There is Baba Faridi's Punjabi verse in Guru Granth Sahib. Okay, we have to remember whenever some saints or work is being included in Guru Granth Sahib, we have to remember it, because there might be a question where you could be given a few names and you have to find the correct ones who have contributed to the Guru Granth Sahib. So Baba Faridi's Punjabi verses. All right, there is Said Gheshu Daraja's writing in Dakhani Hindi. Said Gheshu Daraja's writing in Dakhani Hindi. And there is Amir Khusro. Amir Khusro was a poet, a musician, and a great Sufi saint. So Amir Khusro's Sabak-e-Hind, that is the Persian and Hindi poetry. Alright, so I think that would be all for today's lecture. So let's just quickly go through that what all we have studied. Alright, so we studied about how Sufi movement is shaped the socio-religious landscape of India. We saw that it is associated with spirituality, love and devotion over materialism and religious orthodoxy. We learned that the word Sufi and its origin is from suf or wool, that is symbolic to the simple clothes that the Sufis wore. The word Sufism and what it essentially means, the self-love, the detachment and the connection with God. We learnt about asceticism, what it is. We learnt the principles. Alright, do you want me to quickly go through it? So let's go through it once. There is Tawheed, there is Wahdat al-Wujud, there is Ishq Hakiki, there is Fana, there is Zikr, and there is Peer-Murid relationship, right? So in the spread of Sufism, what we saw is that it came into India in the 11th century through the Persian and Central Asian mystics. It flourished under Delhi Sultanate and the Mughals. Okay, the earliest Sufi is Al-Hujwiri. Alright, then we saw there are multiple silsilas under it, which started taking place from the 12th century onwards, right? So we saw there are two types, that is the Bashara and Beshara. Bashara followed Sharia and Beshara rejected the rigidity of Sharia. So then the silsilas that we saw is the Chishti silsila, under which there are a few important peers, that is the Mainuddin Chishti, there is Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki, there is Baba Fariduddin, there is Nizamuddin Aulia, there is Amir Khusro, alright, there is Sheikh Burhanuddin Garib. Under Suravadi Silsila, we saw the founder is Shahabuddin Surawardi, and alright, there is and the other saint associated with it is Sheikh Buruddin Zakaria. Under Naqshbandi Silsila, we saw it was founded by Khwaja Buhuddin Naqshbandi, that hence the name Naqshbandi Silsila. And we saw there is Baqi Billah and there is Sheikh Mir Mahmud under this Naqshbandi order. There is Qadri Silsila, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Gilani, there is Mian Mir, there is Shah Bakatshani, there is Fardausi Silsila founded by Sheikh Burauddin Samarkandi. There is also another saint associated with this, that is Sheikh Sarfuddin Yahya Merini. There is Madari Silsila founded by Jalaluddin Bukhari Madari. There is Rishi Silsila, that was by Sheikh Nuruddin Wali. Under Sufi practices, we saw there are some important practices and institutions, that is the Khankas, there is Dargah, there is Ziyarat, there is Sama and Qawali. Important terminologies that we saw are Peer, Murid, Khalifa, Tariqa, Fana, Baka, Zakar, Uras, Tasawwuf and Sama. And we saw some of the impacts of the Sufi movement. Alright, we saw two female Sufis, that is Rabia al-Basri and there is Bibi Fatima Sam. We saw the literature, that is of Baba Farid's Punjabi verses, that is included in Guru Granth Sahib. There is Said Ghesu Daraz, who has written in Dakhni Hindi. There is Amir Khusro's Sabak-e-Hind, that is a Persian and Hindavi poetry. With that, we will end today's class. I hope you learned something new and you would be able to retain all of the knowledge that you gained today. The PDF of this whole lecture, that is this document that I taught from, this will be available in the Telegram channel. You can join the Telegram channel from the link in the description. Alright, thank you. Have a great day.